So lately I've been having this problem. Everything feels extremely fake. From fake products, fake listings, fake reviews, everything feels so distorted from reality that it's hard to tell apart what is real anymore. In today's video, I want to share everything I found, why this is not a new phenomena, how did we get here, and last but not least, what are some practical and simple ways to tell apart what is real and what is not. So let's begin.
But to understand this better, we need to look a little further back. Sharing information is one of the most human things we do. Early humans shared info to survive, warning about predators, pointing out food sources, planning hunts. Later, we shared to bond, to gossip, to build trust in bigger groups. And of course, comes in trade, comes in politics, and all of those things. But the moment we started sharing, we also started to exaggerate, sometimes bending the truth a little. And the record of the first fakes goes way back. In ancient Mesopotamia, merchants were already accused of diluting silver to pass it off as higher quality. In fact, the world's oldest customer complaint was written by a customer named Nani, who was furious about the poor quality of the ingots he received and how his service was treated in the deal. In ancient Rome, cheap wines were often mixed with seawater and additives and sold as prestigious Valerian vintages, which were the most celebrated wine of the empire at the time. And in art, Roman workshops produced endless Greek originals that were actually copies, forgeries that fooled buyers, and sometimes even museums today. So the impulse to share is tied up with the impulse to exaggerate, and that sets the stage for the modern illusions we live in today. Philosopher and sociologist Jean Baudrillard wrote about it decades ago in his book Simulacra and Simulation, when images and symbols start replacing the reality they were meant to show. Now in this book, Jean defines 4 stages of the simulacra. First is the faithful image or the copy. This is meant to represent and reflect reality. Next, you have the perversion of reality, where the copy starts distorting how it really looks like. We have the absence of reality, where the copy suggests there was no original at all. And last but not least, we have pure simulacrum, the copy that is unrelated to reality, and the distinction between the reality and this representation completely vanishes. However, to understand this, we need to dig a little more deeper in modern-day illusions. The evolution of control.
One of my favorite ones was Rick Roddick, and in one of his work, The Self Under Siege, he says, "Mass culture is enlightenment in reverse. Its goal is to precisely wipe out the last little garrison of human autonomy." And it's kind of like pointing to this direction that, we are giving up autonomy, we're giving up our ability to think, our own minds. And
one of the ways to look at data and how it has been used over time. Together with the invention of the internet, it was a very big deal to be able to search for something, because now not only you had a search engine, but you also could understand how people are searching for different products. So now solely looking at the purpose of business. Later, you have the rise of social media, and of course there was different equivalents of social media, but then if we look at meta products in particular, you have likes and follows, and all of a sudden you can distill and build custom profiles of different customers, and you can store them somewhere to kind of understand how you can better market to them. Now, if I put on my business hat for a second, and maybe also my data hat, and maybe my tinfoil hat while I'm at it, there was a need and an interest to understand what people are thinking about, what they're searching, what they're doing. So if we couldn't understand what people are thinking, now there is a way to just have everyone type it out themselves. Of course, Roderick also reminds us that history isn't just one way. Every new technology or cultural shift produced a counter-movement to push in the opposite direction. The rise of industrial machines inspired the arts and crafts movement, rejected mass production. The dominance of television gave birth to underground media and zines, and today, while platforms try to predict our every thought, you also see people turning deliberately to analog tools, slow living, or even going fully offline.
But now if we're looking at this, what can you possibly do to tackle with all of these fakeness?
Number 1, create instead of consume. And this is not necessarily only referring to creating something that you will post later or put it on social media or anything like that. This is also referring to simple things such as cooking a meal, playing an instrument, sketching, drawing, doing things on your own, instead of watching somebody else do it into complete perfection that you get to see online. The act of creating, at least for me, breaks this illusion loop, and it generally just feels nice. Number 2, slowing down the inputs. Reading long articles or books, watching full movies without multitasking, giving your senses time to recalibrate. Why this matters is that when you're constantly switching contacts from one app to another, from scrolling to texting to notifications, your brain has to reboot its attention each time. Neuroscientists call this the switching cost. Even tiny jumps between tasks increase mental fatigue and reduce your ability to think deeply. Clifford Nass research at Stanford showed that chronic multitaskers actually get worse at filtering irrelevant information. And then there is a memory aspect to all of this. So fast and short-form content such as TikToks, Reels, Shorts floods your working memory with quick hits of dopamine, but it doesn't let the information to consolidate and sit down in the long-term memory. Psychologists have found that this constant novelty seeking makes it harder to transfer experiences into meaningful memories that you can recall later. In other words, you consume more and you remember less. And last but not least, noticing your body signals. You probably heard of the term trust your gut. When your stomach or chest tightens around certain content, it's often signaling that there's something off about this. Interoception, which is a term from neuroscience, shows that tuning into your bodily states improves decision-making and emotional clarity. So the feeling from the inside that something is off is extremely valuable, as this is another sensory input information that kind of signals that something is off. As long as you don't rely on the feeling alone, as otherwise it can bring up a lot of different biases in your decision making, this is a very valuable built-in system that helps you understand whether something is real or not.
So if everything feels fake lately, it's because your mind is able to call bullshit when it sees bullshit. Thank you so much for watching for another episode of Make Journey. I hope you enjoyed and found some interesting information in this video. I wish you a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.